The simplicity of the original Nintendo Entertainment System makes it a great option for pick-up-and-play gaming. Even folks who didn't know much to anything about video games could pick up the NES controller and join in, and it helped that the system boasted many of the most addictive multiplayer games in video game history. Whether you're new to the classic standard in console-based video gaming, or if you grew up in the 80s and 90s and are ready to rip this list to shreds in the comments section, here are the 10 best multiplayer NES games of all time. Now it seems fitting to do this with a buddy, but since I don't have one around, I thought I'd invite Fluff to trade off with me. So Fluff, why don't you start us off at number 10?
Wow, you really gonna let me start the list? I'm surprised. That's a really selfless move.
Of course, and don't mention it. You got this.
Alright, thanks, Tony. Number 10, Baseball Simulator 1000. Baseball Simulator 1000 is easily my favorite baseball game for the Nintendo Entertainment System, and one of my favorite sports games of all time. Why? Because rocket jump, man. Rocket jump. Baseball Simulator 1000 plays like any other baseball game, but with the addition of dozens of special moves on offense, defense, and pitching. I maintain that it's one of the greatest feelings derived from the NES, nay, from life itself. Catching an otherwise way beyond your reach home run with a rocket jump. It's about as rare as running into and defeating Warmech on that bridge with one character in Final Fantasy. The special moves in this game range from disappearing ball pitches, bomb balls which explode upon landing on the field, and the aforementioned rocket jump. And it's these added features which make this baseball game a ton of fun to play. And on top of all that, if you're a baseball purist and just a wrong person in general who doesn't want to throw fireballs or hit tremor balls, Baseball Sim can be played as a conventional baseball game as well, sans power-ups. There's also a very in-depth customization system where you can create your own baseball team, customizing the stats for every player on your team, and if you're in a league with features special moves, you can pick and choose which players get which special at-bat moves, pitches, etc. The only thing missing from this multiplayer classic is co-op to play on the same team with a friend. But then again, very few baseball games in general, regardless of the system, got this right. Tony?
Number 9, Marble Madness. Kids were mad for marbles in the 1980s. For reference, Seeker Plunk, and just kind of marbles in general. Atari capitalized on this by creating an arcade classic in Marble Madness and porting it quite nicely to the NES. The idea was novel and simple enough. Two players guide notably difficult-to-control marbles through even more difficult-to-navigate obstacle courses. This game can be beaten in literally less than 10 minutes. Actually, it has to be beaten in less than 10 minutes, or you're gonna run out of time, and the "this is the worst thing that's ever happened" music will play. And although it's an incredibly short outing, it's also incredibly satisfying when you do pull it off. Like anything in life, it really comes down to how you fare at the piston section of level 3, a metaphor which can really be applied to anything. Back to you, Fluff.
Thank you. Number 8, Super Mario Bros. 3. After ditching multiplayer altogether and the anomaly that was Mario 2, Nintendo brought friends back together in arguably the greatest game overall to grace the NES in Super Mario Bros. 3. An achievement in everything game design and showing off exactly how far the NES had come in just a few short years, Mario 3 went on to become one of the best-selling standalone games of all time, adjusted for inflation. Of course, it didn't hurt that this game was sold at the precedent-setting, unheard of at the time, price of $50 in 1990. They went back to the format of the first Mario, but with greater level diversity and an overworld dynamic with mini-games, mini-bosses, an item menu, boss levels, and a few Easter eggs along the way. Each world had a unique theme to it as well, which kept the game very fresh. The only thing keeping this game from being higher up on this list was the fact that it didn't offer simultaneous co-op, outside of the minigame-like feature when you could battle the other player in a classic Mario Bros. Format. As the multiplayer works by trading back and forth turns between the two players after someone dies or completes a level, with two players of comparable skill levels, the multiplayer flows and works quite well. The caveat of this is that it can really hammer in, pun intended, a frustrating complex for the weaker player who keeps dying and only manages to get a turn when the other player completes a level. I think we've all had that experience of inviting a friend over who didn't play a lot of video games and quickly becomes disenchanted with the game and inevitably lobbies to go outside and bat a ball around instead once they've burnt through all their lives before a World 2. No, Steven, let's not have a koosh ball toss. The sun's been out there for billions of years. Mario 3 has only been out for a month. Decades after its initial release, many folks still hail Super Mario Bros. 3 as among the greatest games of all time, and it's even more fun with a friend. Not speaking of which, here's Tony.
Stupid cat. Number 7, Double Dragon 3. So admittedly, I know I'm in the minority here, but I'll take Double Dragon 3 over its immediate predecessor every time for 2 reasons: Chin and Ren Zhao. Double Dragon has long been known, since the beginning, as a co-op go-to. The original game is one of the best titles to ever grace the NES, beat 'em up or otherwise, and I likely would have put it here in 3's place had it offered simultaneous co-op like the arcade and PC versions did. And 2 is great in its own way, but it's when they expanded on the formula and let you play as 2 additional characters which really made the game much more interesting and versatile in terms of how you played. Assuming you were in the know, even your friend would work to preserve Ren Zhao for his near-perfect force field-like spin kick that could lock down a side altogether by creating a wall of death, which everyone else could hide behind, assuming the baddies were only coming in from one side, of course. The other very important thing to know is that Chin's fists were incredibly overpowered, as you could take out an enemy with a basic 4-punch combo when it would take half a dozen jump kicks from anyone else to get the same effect. I have to think it was a mistake considering Chin's Iron Claw, which he gets a finite number of uses out of, literally does less damage than his straight-up fists. But once I discovered this, Chin was my man. The one notable downfall of this game, pun intended, is the pits, which were ridiculously easy to fall into, given how awkward the jumping could be. And once the character was dead, they were gone, unless you had to continue to call upon after everyone had died. So if Ren Zhao jumps especially awkwardly, as he is wont to do, and falls into a pit, you are SOL when it comes to using his unique set of skills from an upcoming part, and just have to try to forge on with a quarter or third of your team, and, let's be honest, amount of total health. Fortunately, Milquetoast, Billy, and Jimmy are there to absorb the punches and play stuntmen for the trickiest pit parts. But I digress. It's a fantastic multiplayer game if you can, quite literally, get past the pits.
Yeah, try to stay on topic, Tony. Number 6, Skate or Die. Don't you like my do? The de facto original skateboarding video game entry, and honestly still one of the best as it holds up years later, Skate or Die is number 6 on this list of the best multiplayer NES games of all time. The game features 5 mini skateboarding-themed games, which can be played solo or together with a friend, 3 of which can be played simultaneously. It starts off with the freestyle and height competitions, as you and a friend can take turns putting together your best lip, air, and grind tricks, followed by your best maximum vertical launch attempts, respectively. Konami figured the trash talk would be nice and salty by now, as they give you a chance to trip and kick each other, as well as disrespect the law in the jam course, and also awkwardly skate down an obstacle course in the very forgettable downhill skate. But once tensions had fully boiled over, you and your former friend can settle things once and for all in an empty pool with a couple jousting sticks. The game even lets you enter as many names into the competition as you like, so more friends can get into the action, just albeit not all at once. It took many years before they put out another noteworthy skating game, because this one set the bar decently high, and it's great with a mate. Sorry, that felt like a really forced attempt at a catchphrase.
Yeah, anyway. Number 5, River City Ransom. After all that pool jousting, you'll probably be needing something to repair your friendship. And River City Ransom is just what the figurative doctor ordered. At number 5, River City Ransom is the story of a couple friends who go into the dangerous world of River City to rescue, take a wild guess, a girlfriend. And they're ready to beat the crap out of anyone who stands in their way. This game kind of feels like an early Final Fight, or a sillier Double Dragon, but with lots of pit stops along the way in the form of shops, where you can buy valuable items to stock your inventory with, from health replenishing foods to more powerful attacks. And while the fight system isn't initially as sophisticated as a Double Dragon title, the aforementioned moves enable you to develop your character as you like the further you progress. Now, the gameplay is also slightly unlinear, so you can freely move around other and previously discovered areas of River City as you like. So this is great if you want to backtrack to a shop you already passed once you finally have the scratch for a move or some food, or if the goons are just too tough at your current point and you need to catch your breath somewhere a bit easier. This is a great co-op title for looking out for each other and devising the best way to spend your hard-earned cash. Stone hands, dragon feet. Plus, it has the character design from World Cup Soccer and Dodgeball. Another one of my favorites. Fluff?
Number 4, Rescue Rangers. Tied with DuckTales as the best Disney afternoon cartoon video game spin-off, Rescue Rangers comes in at number 4 on this list of the best multiplayer games of the NES of all time. Like most of the Capcom Disney ventures, this game was colorful, had great gameplay, and a great soundtrack. A theme throughout many of the games on this list is the co-op element, where specifically not just playing the game together, but working together to further your goal. Rescue Rangers is a great example of just that, because it allows one player to literally pick up and put the other player on their back. This is a godsend in areas where one target is easier to manage than two, areas where there simply isn't enough room to operate with two people, i.e. the end of the damn sewer level, or where one area is simply beyond the skill level of one of the players. And, as I briefly mentioned earlier, this game has one of the best soundtracks of the Disney Capcom ventures, which admittedly doesn't sound that impressive at first until you think of the competition this game was in. It's also just really fun to pick up and play over and over if you've got a half hour or so to kill, as it offers just the right amount of challenge to bring me back time and time again.
Number 3, Turtles 2: The Arcade Game. Arguably the most famous arcade to NES port on the system, so much so that they didn't even bother removing it from the title, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Arcade Game delivers the arcade game-like experience with slightly less impressive graphics, but by taking a hell of a lot less quarters. 160 by my count, as the game was roughly $40 when it came out, I want to say. You can choose your favorite turtle, probably Michelangelo, and fight your way through 8-ish levels filled with the Foot Clan, Mousers, and less memorable baddies in order to stop Shredder and Krang. They even added a bit of extra content like that Japanese dojo level to the home version, just to push anyone on the fence over to their side. It's beat-em-up action at its finest, nice and simple, and a perfect excuse for Tim Gabbard to come over after school and split some bagel bites as you kick shell. Although admittedly that expression coming from the Turtles never made a whole hell of a lot of sense to me. And if all of that wasn't enough, the damn game was sponsored by Pizza Hut. Is that a good thing? I don't know. Was that Pizza Hut Little League commercial before the first TMNT movie a good thing? I don't know, but I still find myself singing it from time to time. Check out the link to my cover of that song in the description below, by the way.
Frickin' shill. Number 2. Oh wait, I see what you did now. You let me start it off so you could have number 1, you sneaky mother.
Just basic math, Fluff. You should learn it sometime.
Ugh, whatever. Number 2, Bubble Bobble. Ah, Bubble Bobble. The story of two monsters out to, yep, you can finish that sentence yourself, rescue their girlfriends. Bubble Bobble just misses out on the top spot of the 10 best multiplayer NES games of all time, coming in at number 2. This is one of those games which is just a ton of fun to power through from the start. Get the fast, auto-fire bubbles, and go to town. Everything about the look and feel of this game is cute. The soundtrack is cheery as hell, but if it doesn't have you at least contemplating throwing the game across the room by level 30, you may need to get your hearing checked. My favorite part about this game is the co-op aspect. Bubble Bobble was meant for 2 players, and although you can have a jolly little time by yourself fighting your way through level 100, you literally cannot get the good ending without a second player's monster, at least in the game. This is because, just like real life, you need to have a friend for your girlfriend's friend. That's right, this may be the first video game equivalent to, it ain't fun unless we all get some. And while you can just plug in a second controller to have that monster present, it's damn hard to accomplish everything you need to hit the secret road to take you to the final stage and the good ending without having someone else working with you on that one level. And if you've played it, you know what I'm talking about. Many of the levels are much easier with a second player, like where they give you no platforms to reach the enemies. You just have to bounce on a string of your own bubbles to where you strategically place your friend's monster to fire a never-ending supply of bubbles while you climb and they dodge incoming projectiles. And most beautifully of all, if one of the monsters runs out of lives, the other player can sacrifice one of their lives to revive their ally. Sounds like these monsters at least know a thing or two about sharing.
You got something to say, Fluff?
No, just go ahead, announce number 1. It's your channel after all.
Why don't you go ahead and at least announce the runners-up? You should know a thing or two about that.
Know a thing or two, you son of a... Anyway, here's a few games that didn't quite make the multiplayer cut, but are still a ton of fun to play with a friend.
Number 1, Contra. The gold standard for two-dimensional shoot-'em-ups, Contra rounds out our 10 best multiplayer NES games of all time list. This one ticks every box. The gameplay is simple and easy to pick up, just run, shoot, jump, dodge, and repeat. There are a number of different gun upgrades which flash across the screen, from the should-be-cooler-than-it-is laser to the easily best weapon in the game, spreader. The level saw the players travel from jungles to waterfalls to presumably freezing snowfields, and despite this, they always wore the same dazzling Siegfried and Roy sequin-laden outfits. The presentations of the levels kept things pretty fresh as well, as it varied from side-scrolling to up-scrolling to even a couple of base levels to help break up the gameplay, with the latter placing the camera behind the player as they tried to destroy a corridor of dangerous turrets, projectiles, and bouncing baddies. The soundtrack is pretty standard Konami fare, but it does a good job capturing the feel for many of the levels and their environments. There's also a decent challenge associated with the game, causing many players to fall back on the infamous and oft-referenced in pop culture Konami code, thus giving all players a healthy backstock of 30 lives, making this classic much more manageable. Despite this game being atop this list of the greatest multiplayer NES games of all time, it destroyed as many friendships as it built, particularly on the aforementioned waterfall level, where the screen would move up with the progress of whichever player was moving up first on the screen. This meant that if your +1 was lagging behind, trying to get an item, and you jumped to the next platform before they were ready, the screen would inevitably scroll up and cause them to fall to their death and punch you in the process. Still, at the end of the day, this is a great game, and a relatively short one at that, meaning that pretty much everyone's always down to spend 30 minutes to save the world and consider themselves a hero. Yup, even the best NES games still had crap endings. Sadly, thanks to the animation of the helicopter and island blowing up, this was actually one of the better endings on the system. Speaking of Contra, check out my No Death run by clicking on the link in the description below as well.
Alright, there you have it. Our picks for the top 10 best NES multiplayer games of all time.
Why not let us know exactly how wrong we are in the comment section below?
And make sure to subscribe to Let's Play with Brigands for more top 10 lists, Let's Plays, live streaming, and fun times.